So, the Cudgel Monks.
What a load of old shit!
Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So yeah, as kind of the intro will have hinted at, not a huge fan of these Cudgel Monks so far. Certainly feel a little bit lackluster and pretty hard to use in most situations. Let's head over to the barracks and have a little bit of a look at them. See if we can find them. Annoyingly got two of them because I've also got the contact hire one as well. So in effect, they are a 18 man unit, which makes use of basically this weapon staff in a sort of AoE ability. They do make use of full blunt damage, which is nice, and they do have a few interesting abilities. They have what they call this six-way staff, which is in effect a charge, which ends in like an AoE sort of spinning ability, which does do damage to quite a bit of stuff, but effectively, because they stop to activate this ability at the end of their charge, it means they sort of don't really push through anything. They sort of reach the enemy unit, stop in front of it, and then do their thing, rather than a traditional charge which sort of tries to punch through the front of the enemy wall. And then they have this windmill strike, which is effectively similar to the ability at the end of the six-way staff, where they just sort of spin around in a bit of a circle, and it does sort of an AoE damage. You do get some heals in some of these things. I think we get a bit of a heal when we hit the end of the six-way staff, and we also get a little bit of heal as we use the windmill strike. But realistically, on an 18-man unit with only 10,000 hit points and defensive stats which are, non-existent, basically, some of the lowest in the game, then adding 500 hit points realistically makes no difference at all. And that reflects in why I've ended up going down the bottom tree. There's definitely an argument for increase the healing here and an extra 500 points on the six-way staff. Yes, but in my opinion, it's not really going to make that much difference. It's not like a Berserker heal. You're not like getting into rage mode. It just doesn't seem to work for me in the same way. So I would rather have the being able to hit a few units at once. So at least if you do manage to get into a good position, which doesn't happen very often, and if you do manage to get actually some kills, which doesn't happen very often, then at least you can actually do relatively well with it and just output that damage. They do supposedly have a few other abilities. I don't know if it's listed on here, but in effect, when they're charging forwards, they are supposed to get an element of range block. So they charge forwards as they spin their staffs as they charge forwards. They're supposed to deflect arrows. A little bit hard to put into practice, probably, in reality, with how effective this realistically is. I've certainly not found it to be a particularly useful trait, really, so far. Other than that, they do have a good, nice base movement speed at 6.1, so they do get around the map very quickly. But I find their normal attack, outside of abilities, is just woeful. I just find that they just don't seem to even really attack at all. It's kind of like, almost like playing with a unit of Iron Reapers sometimes, it feels like. And it makes it very frustrating. This, combined with the fact that they're a small unit, they're very soft, and they just don't really fulfill any niche, really makes them one of the worst seasonal units I think we've had in the game so far. If you want to hunt range units, then Sons of Fenrir every day of the week are a hands down better unit than these guys. So yeah, I hope they get a little bit of a buff, because I think it would be nice if they actually had a little bit more usefulness to them. Obviously at the moment kits are very cheap, so I guess they are a cheap unit to run for a Silver Era unit. And doctrine wise, well, I'm just going for the blunt damage. We get a little bit of a couple of these monastic doctrines just by one from completing the seasonal challenges, and this one you get from doing the extra quests that you get there as well. And I just put a breakthrough doctrine on just to try and up their damage to enemy units. But anyway, we've suffered enough, so let's hop into some battles with them and suffer, well, I guess a little bit more, and see how we can get on and what we can actually do with them. So we kick things off on Harbour City. I've been having, well, just a string of terrible games with these guys, so I was trying to think about how I wanted to do differently. And my plan was to try and get them into the siege tower. They're an AoE unit, right? If you can get them against a cluster of units, then you might be able to do okay. My problem was that there's quite a lot of pikes in this tower, including some Forte Braccio, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get in. But as they start to push out, I make my move. I go forwards. They do a bit initially, start to get some hits in. I go for an ult, get a little bit caught back by this Nadachi. It takes me a while to be able to deal with him. And in the meantime, the unit starts to go down the tower, and I activate their windmill ability. And because they don't get stunned, and they're in this really confined space, their windmill ability starts to become really effective. And then they're starting to follow up. They're using their swing. I get myself poleaxe delted. But by this point, we've actually fought through the melee units and onto the range. And look how effective the unit is in this sort of situation. Well, not great, but actually, it did pretty well there. You know, up to just over 80 kills. Took out quite a lot of range. And actually, the unit did itself really kind of proud. So they seem to work better on towers because of the AoE. Or at least that's been my finding so far. The only other area where I'm finding monks to be, if not great, but at least passable, is against berserkers. I don't quite know what it is that makes them sort of semi-effective against them, but I find they sort of tend to do okay. At least when they get all the AoE going, they seem to sort of crowd round and get some decent hits on the berserkers, and it seems to work quite well. See, in that clip there, we're able to kind of overwhelm them. Again, in this fight, a little bit harder because the numbers of berserkers are a little bit higher. We've got 2 or 3 stacks of them here, and they are going to get some rage mode off. But still, at least initially, you kind of get the impression of how the unit performs. And actually, you know, their damage against them really isn't that bad when they're focusing on a small number of units. It's just that once the berserkers get into that rage mode, it then becomes very difficult for them to not just get completely overwhelmed, and, you know, they kind of do. But still, they managed to kill 8 berserkers. That's not too bad going. And even better, we just managed to escape that pike and live. And that really sums up my experience with these monks so far. In 95% of the cases, I find I just get myself killed pretty quickly without really dealing any sort of significant amount of damage. They're really not a great unit. You know, they can work in some situations. Of course, any unit can be made to work, and better players than me can probably do better with them. But in most situations, I've not really found them to have any sort of niche or use that can't be fulfilled better by a different unit. I think they were almost supposed to be a rival to the Sons of Fenrir, but I think in reality, Sons of Fenrir are such a better unit and do the job so much better that I don't really see the place for these monks in the current meta. But still, hopefully they get a buff. They may end up getting changed. It wouldn't be the first time we've had sort of seasonal units that struggle a lot at the start, but then get improved later on. So hopefully we may see some changes to them going forwards. But anyway, I think I'm going to end the video there. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. How have you been kind of getting on with the monks? Have you had any good games with them, or have you kind of been struggling with them a bit like I have? Anyway, do let me know in the comments down below, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.